The late afternoon sun streamed through the large bay window of their suburban home, casting long, warm rectangles of light across the hardwood floor. Kate Bennett sat cross-legged in the center of the living room, a fortress of cardboard boxes surrounding her. It was their 5th anniversary, and she had a plan. William, her husband of 5 years, was away on a business trip, not due back until late that night. This gave her the perfect, uninterrupted window to execute her surprise. Her idea was simple, yet profoundly romantic. She wanted to create a memory lane. In the attic, tucked away in dusty trunks, were the tangible relics of their life together. Ticket stubs from their first movie, a dried corsage from a college formal, and the letters they had exchanged during the 2 years they dated long distance. As her plan was to gather these treasures, arrange them beautifully on the dining table with candles and a bottle of his favorite wine, and have it all ready for him the moment he walked through the door. Humming a soft tune, she climbed down the creaking attic stairs. A cardboard box, labeled Will's College, balanced on her hip. The box was heavier than she expected, and as she set it down, the worn tape gave way, spilling a cascade of notebooks, old textbooks, and loose papers onto the floor. "Oh, for crying out loud," she muttered with a soft chuckle, kneeling to gather the mess. She carefully collected the textbooks, their spines cracked with age. She scooped up a handful of loose-leaf papers covered in the sharp, angular handwriting she knew so well from his university days. As she neatened the pile, a leather-bound journal slipped out and fell open on the floor. Kate's first instinct was to close it. She respected William's privacy, but her eye caught a date on the open page. It was from a time before they had even met. Her curiosity was innocent. She was simply interested in the man he was before her, the 20-year-old version of her husband. She picked it up, reading a few lines about a difficult exam and a frustrating roommate. It was mundane, sweet even. She flipped a few more pages, smiling at his youthful anxieties and ambitions. Then, the handwriting changed. It became tighter, more deliberate. The date was from the spring of 2018. They had been together for almost a year at that point. Her smile widened. This was going to be a love letter to their early days. And then she read the first line of the entry. I don't know how to write this. I don't know how to admit this to myself, let alone to paper. But I have to get it out. I met someone." The humming in Kate's throat died. The smile on her face froze, then slowly faded. "It was at the conference in Chicago. I was just grabbing coffee, feeling out of place, and she was there. Her name is Elena. We started talking about the awful keynote speaker, and it was like a switch flipped. We talked for 3 hours. It wasn't just flirting. It was a connection, the kind you read about in books. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of everything." Kate's hands began to tremble. The words on the page swam before her eyes. This wasn't a journal about exams and roommates. This was a confession, a secret history. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her, a prickling sensation that started in her chest and spread to her fingertips. She wanted to stop reading, to throw the book back in the box and forget she ever saw it. But she couldn't. Her eyes were glued to the page, pulled along by a morbid, desperate need to know. Coming home to Kate felt wrong. She was talking about weekend plans, about us, and all I could think about was Elena's laugh. I feel like a monster. Kate is wonderful. She's kind, she's stable, she's everything a person should want, but with Elena, I felt alive. I felt seen. I don't know what to do. The guilt is eating me alive. A choked sound escaped Kate's throat. It was a cross between a gasp and a sob. She read the next entry and the next. The journal documented a secret correspondence, a series of phone calls, and a torturous internal battle. Yes, there were entries filled with self-loathing, vows to end it, and then, just pages later, declarations that he had never felt this way before. He wrote about Kate with a kind of sad, dutiful affection, as if she were a beloved but boring pet. He wrote about Elena with a passion and a longing that Kate had never once seen in his eyes. She read about a second meeting, a few months later, a weekend trip he had told Kate was for a guy's fishing trip. The journal entry described it in excruciating detail. The hotel room. The feeling of finally being with Elena. The words he used were beautiful and devastating. He called it the most real weekend of my life. Kate slammed the journal shut. The sound was loud in the silent house. She was shaking violently now, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The room felt cold despite the warm sun. She looked around at the scattered memories on the floor, the ticket stubs, the letters, the photos. It all felt like a lie, a carefully constructed stage set. She wasn't the star of her own marriage. She was a supporting actress in a play she didn't know she was in. The pain was physical. It was a raw, aching void in the center of her chest. But beneath the pain, a cold, hard nugget of resolve began to form. William was coming home tonight. He would walk through that door, probably tired from his trip, and he would expect their familiar life. He would expect her. For the next few hours, Kate moved like a ghost through her own home. She mechanically put the journal back in the box, tucked the box away in a closet, and cleaned up the scattered items from the attic. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She was in a state of profound shock. But her mind was a frantic kaleidoscope of images. William's face as he said, "I love you," his hand in hers, the quiet evenings on the couch. Had any of it been real? Had he been thinking of her? Of Elena? By the time the clock neared 11, she was sitting on the couch, still and silent. The candles she had planned to light were still in their box. The wine sat unopened on the counter. The only light in the room came from a single lamp on the end table, casting long, distorted shadows. She heard the familiar sound of his key in the lock. The door opened. William stepped in, dropping his suitcase with a tired sigh. He looked up and saw her sitting in the dim light. "Hey, you," he said, his voice warm with affection. "You didn't have to wait up. My flight was a nightmare." He crossed the room towards her, leaning down to kiss her. And it was an automatic gesture, a habit of 5 years. But as his lips brushed her cheek, Kate flinched. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, but William felt it. He pulled back, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked, his brow furrowing. Kate looked at him. She looked at the man she had loved, trusted, and built a life with. She saw the familiar shape of his face, the kind eyes. But now, behind those eyes, she saw the ghost of Elena. She heard the echo of his words. "With Elena, I felt alive." She opened her mouth to speak, to scream, to demand the truth. But the words wouldn't come. The shock was too deep. So she did the only thing she could do in that moment. She lied. "Just tired," she whispered, her voice hollow and foreign to her own ears. He nodded, accepting her answer without question. And went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. He had no idea. He stood there, casually leaning against the counter, drinking his water, completely oblivious that, in the space of a single afternoon, the entire foundation of their marriage had crumbled to dust. He was living in one reality, and Kate was trapped in another, the secret burning a hole in her heart as she sat in the suffocating silence of their living room. Part 2. The days that followed were a master class in duplicity for Kate. On the surface, life went on. She made William's coffee in the morning, signed a birthday card for his mother, and sat across from him at the dinner table, making small talk about work and the neighbor's new dog. But beneath the placid surface, she was a detective, a forensic analyst of her own life. That everything William did was now viewed through the lens of that journal. A late night at the office was no longer a late night. It was a potential meeting. A distracted gaze out the window wasn't tiredness. It was him thinking of her. The casual endearments he used. Babe, sweetheart. Now felt generic, tossed off, devoid of the passion she now knew he was capable of feeling for someone else. She became hypervigilant. She noticed things she had never seen before, the way he sometimes looked at his phone, and a small, private smile would flicker across his lips before he locked the screen. The way he'd step into the other room to take a call, his voice dropping to a murmur. She had always trusted him, so these little things had been invisible to her. Now they were glaring red flags, each one a fresh wound. And the worst part was the silence. The secret sat between them like a third person at the table, a phantom guest at their bed. At night, she would lie awake, listening to his soft, rhythmic breathing, her mind racing. She would picture him with Elena. She imagined them laughing together, talking for 3 hours in a Chicago coffee shop. She imagined the hotel room from the fishing trip. The images were torture, a film reel of betrayal playing endlessly behind her eyes. She tried to rationalize it. The journal was old. It was from 5 years ago. Maybe it was a fleeting thing. Maybe it ended. People make mistakes. People have doubts. Their marriage was strong now, wasn't it? They were happy. Weren't they? But a small, still voice inside her would whisper the truth. If it was over, why did he keep the journal? Why did he bring it with him through 2 moves, from their apartment to this house? It wasn't just an old notebook, it was a cherished artifact, a record of the most real time of his life. And if the feelings had truly died, why did he still have those guarded moments with his phone? The doubt was a poison, and it was corroding her from the inside out. It began to affect her behavior in ways she couldn't control. She became short-tempered, snapping at him for leaving a dish in the sink. She withdrew physically, her body stiffening when he tried to hold her hand. William, for his part, began to notice. The woman he came home to was not the same woman he had left before his business trip. She was distant, her eyes often holding a faraway look of sadness he couldn't understand. One evening, he found her in the spare bedroom and staring at a box in the closet. It was the box labeled Will's College. "Hey," he said softly, leaning against the doorframe. "What are you doing in here?" Kate jumped, her hand flying to her chest. "Nothing," she said, her voice too quick, too high. "Just, organizing?" William's eyes narrowed. He walked over and looked into the box. "My old college stuff? Wow, I haven't seen this in years. What made you dig this out?" Kate's heart hammered against her ribs. "I was looking for something," she mumbled, turning away. He reached into the box, his hand brushing past the very journal that held his secret. "What were you looking for? I can help." "I wasn't looking for anything specific," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. She pushed past him, out of the small room, leaving him standing there, confused and hurt. "Kate!" Wait," he called after her, following her into the hallway. "What's going on with you? You've been acting strange for days. Did something happen while I was gone? Did I do something?" She whirled around to face him. For a moment, the truth was right there, on the tip of her tongue. She wanted to scream it at him. "You happened. You and your Elena. I know about the conference, the phone calls, the fishing trip. I know I was never enough." But she couldn't. Confronting him meant the secret would be out, and she wasn't ready for what came next. She wasn't ready for the conversation, the explanations, the potential lies. She wasn't ready for her world to officially end. As long as she didn't say the words, a part of her could still pretend. "Just work stress," she lied, her voice trembling. "I'm fine." He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes. He looked hurt, rejected, and utterly bewildered. He reached out a hand to touch her arm. "You know you can talk to me, right? Whatever it is." His touch, which once brought her comfort, now felt like a brand. She flinched away just as she had the night he came home. "Don't," she whispered. He pulled his hand back as if burned. The look on his face was one of pure, unadulterated shock. In 5 years of marriage, she had never rejected his comfort. He stood in the hallway, silent and still, as she turned and walked into their bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. William was left without words. He stood there for a long time, the silence of the house pressing in on him. He replayed the last few days in his mind, searching for a clue, a reason for her sudden coldness. And he thought about his business trip. Had he forgotten their anniversary? He hadn't. He had a gift in his suitcase, still wrapped. He just hadn't had the chance to give it to her yet, with her being so distant. He walked back to the spare bedroom and looked down at the open box. His old life spread out before him. He knelt and began to sift through the items, a nostalgic sadness washing over him. His hand touched the soft leather of the journal. He pulled it out, a flicker of memory igniting. He hadn't looked at this in years. He opened it, flipping through the pages of exam stress and roommate troubles. And then he got to the spring of 2018. He saw the entries about the conference, about Elena. A cold dread washed over him. His blood ran cold. He read his own words, the words of a confused, selfish 25-year-old. The passion, the guilt. The secret meetings. He had forgotten how intense it had been, how tormented he had felt. He had also, he realized with a sickening jolt, forgotten that he had ever written it all down. He thought of Kate, finding this box. He thought of her strange behavior, her sadness, her flinch from his touch. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. She knew. She had found the journal. He closed the book, his hands trembling as badly as Kate's had been days earlier. The secret was out. The past he had buried, the mistake he had made and thought he had moved past, was now a live grenade in the middle of their living room. He had left her without words by keeping this secret for so long. And now, he was the one who was left without words, standing in the dim light of the spare room, holding the evidence of his own betrayal, with no idea how to fix the unfixable. Part 3. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Kate was in the kitchen, her back to the door, mechanically stirring her coffee, even though it had long gone cold. She heard William's footsteps on the stairs, his hesitant pause at the kitchen threshold. She didn't turn around. He was holding the journal. He walked in and placed it gently on the kitchen island, right next to the forgotten salt shaker. It sat there between them, a silent testament to the rupture. "Kate," he said, his voice hoarse, as if he hadn't slept. "We need to talk." She finally turned. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from another sleepless night. She looked at the journal, then at him. There was no anger in her expression, only a deep, profound exhaustion. "There's nothing to talk about, William," she said, her voice flat and empty. "I read it. All of it." He flinched at the use of his full name. She never called him William. He was always Will. "It's not what you think," he started, the cliché falling from his lips before he could stop it. A bitter, humorless laugh escaped her. Not what I think? Will, I read your own words. You wrote that you felt alive with her, that coming home to me felt wrong, that our life together felt like a weight. What exactly am I supposed to think? He ran a hand through his hair, his face a mask of anguish. That was 5 years ago, Kate. We had just started dating. I was a mess. I was scared of how serious things were getting with you, and I sabotaged myself. I ran after something shiny and new because I was terrified of something real. So it was my fault? She asked, her voice finally gaining an edge. My stability and my love were so suffocating that you had to find someone to make you feel alive? No. God, no. That's not what I meant. He took a step towards her, but she held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. He obeyed, his arms hanging limply at his sides. It was about me, my own immaturity. I was an idiot, a selfish, scared idiot. What happened with her? Kate asked, the question she had been dreading and needing to ask for a week. William sighed, the sound heavy with old shame. It fizzled out. We met a couple more times. It was exciting, but it was also hollow. It was based on fantasy, on being away from real life. When we were together, all we talked about was what we were escaping from. Eventually, I realized that the life I was trying to escape was the one I actually wanted, the real one, with you. When? Kate pressed. When did you have this grand realization? He hesitated. After the weekend I wrote about, the fishing trip. When I came back and you had made me that stupid lasagna that you know I love, and we just watched a movie on the couch. It was so simple, so normal. And I felt this wave of peace. I knew then that what I had with Elena wasn't real. It was a distraction, a symptom. So you ended it? Yes, he said, meeting her eyes for the first time. I called her the next day and told her it was over. I never saw her again. But you kept the journal, Kate whispered, the flatness returning to her voice. You kept it for 5 years. Now you moved it from apartment to apartment. You put it in a box with your college things like it was a memory you wanted to preserve, not a mistake you wanted to forget. This was the crux of it. This was the detail that had hurt her more than the affair itself. The affair was a wound. Keeping the journal was salt in it every single day for 5 years. William looked down at the floor, his shoulders slumped. I don't know why I kept it, he admitted, his voice thick with shame. I think I kept it as a reminder of the worst version of myself, a reminder of what I almost threw away. It wasn't to remember her, it was to remember the pain and the guilt, so I would never, ever come close to doing something like that again. Kate stared at him, trying to decipher the truth in his words. It sounded plausible. It even sounded noble, in a twisted way. But was it true? Or was it just a convenient excuse he had crafted over the years? You should have told me, she said, her voice finally breaking, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. Back then, when it happened, you should have told me. He looked up, his own eyes glistening. I know I should have. I was a coward. I was so afraid of losing you that I convinced myself that burying it was the kind thing to do. That telling you would only hurt you for no reason, since it was over. It was selfish. It was wrong. I took away your choice. I built the first 5 years of our marriage on a lie of omission. The silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence. It was filled not just with hurt, but with the raw, difficult labor of truth-telling. I need to know everything, Kate said finally, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. I need to know her name. I need to know exactly what happened. I need to know every detail you can remember. I need to know the truth. All of it because the story I've been telling myself in my head for the past week is far worse than anything you could tell me. And so, for the next hour, William talked. He told her about Elena, a consultant he had met at the conference. He told her about the initial attraction, the intoxicating feeling of being understood by a stranger. He told her about the phone calls, the emails, the secret second meeting. He spared no detail, answering every question she asked, no matter how painful. He told her about the gut-wrenching guilt, and the moment of clarity on their couch that had finally given him the strength to end it. Kate listened. She didn't interrupt. She absorbed every word, letting the truth, however ugly, wash over her. By the time he was finished, she felt wrung out, empty, but strangely, a little lighter. The phantom images in her head were replaced by reality. It was a painful reality, but it was the truth. When he was done, William looked at her, his face a canvas of desperation and hope. "Kate, I am so sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I broke your trust in a way that might never be fixed. But I am begging you, tell me what to do. Tell me how I can even begin to make this right. I will do anything. I will go to counseling. I will give you all the time you need. I will sleep in the spare room for as long as you want. Please don't give up on us." Kate looked at the man she had married, the man who had betrayed her and then hidden it for 5 years. The love she felt for him was still there, buried deep under the rubble of the past week. But trust? Respect? Those were completely gone. She didn't know if they could ever be rebuilt. "I don't know what I want, Will," she said honestly, her voice tired. "I don't know if I can get past this. But I know I can't just pretend it didn't happen. Not anymore." He nodded, accepting her answer. There were no more words left to say. He picked up the journal from the counter, walked over to the fireplace, and without a word, threw it in. He struck a match and lit the corner of the leather-bound book. They both watched as the flames consumed the pages, the evidence of his secret burning away into ash. And it was a symbolic gesture, a visual promise. But as the fire died down, the real work, the long, uncertain path to healing, was just beginning. William was left without words, but now he was also left with the immense, silent task of proving his remorse was real. 6. 6 months had passed since the journal burned in the fireplace. The autumn leaves that had been fiery red and gold were long gone, replaced by the stark, bare branches of winter, which had now given way to the first tentative blossoms of spring. The seasons outside the Bennett house had changed, and slowly, painfully, so had the lives inside it. The first few months had been the hardest. William, true to his word,